Okay, hi everyone. I'm Selena Hill, the digital editor at Black Enterprise, and today we have a very special person who we're speaking with. We have Maxine Williams. She is the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at Facebook. Hi, Maxine.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Selena.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to speak with you today. You know, as we know, the coronavirus is affecting the African American community at a greater rate than other ethnic groups across the country. But companies like Facebook are stepping up in this time of crisis, which is why we here at Black Enterprise thought it was so important to speak directly with you about the initiatives that you guys are doing.
Yeah, it's such a tragic time, to see the exacerbation of what have been persistent and long-term inequalities coming to the fore and taking people's lives, literally, their lives and their livelihoods. I mean, it can be overwhelming to get your head around the impact of this.
It's surreal. It is, you know, industries have shut down, the economy has plummeted, people's lives have been disrupted. You know, it's a lot going on. But, you know, on a lighter note, I want to start this conversation talking about the presentation that Facebook did with BET last night. You guys did a news special called Black America's Fight, which was an excellent report on how the coronavirus is affecting the African American community. And that was followed by Saving Ourselves, a BET COVID-19 relief effort to raise money. And it featured amazing performances from a host of Black artists. What was your favorite moment from last night's presentation?
Oh, wow. So first, the special. The BT News special with Facebook, I thought was excellent. That partnership is a really important partnership to us because we want people to have the right information to be able to do the best that they can do in this situation. And it was really important to get practical, useful information from sources that they trust, from people who look like them, right? And we had all of these experts, whether they were economic or health experts, who were people of color as well. And I thought that was just really important. And so actually, there were some moments in that special where I was just like, whoa, there was the Black ER doctor talking about just how many bodies and what that was like. And, to get a sense of the volume and to contrast that with a woman in Chicago who was saying, I don't know if this is real, right? The fact that in our communities, people are still saying, I don't know if thousands of people are dying. Like, so there is a need to still bring the right information so people can take care of themselves and take care of the people who they support. So I thought this new special was excellent. And then the telethon, I mean, how amazing, what wonderful talent, what great energy. And so much money was raised for all of these organizations, on the ground organizations, local organizations in the cities that need it most, covering issues, a range of issues that, I mean, I could not be more proud. The team at Facebook that worked with BET, last night we were like, wow, like, you feel, when you go home from work and in a tragedy and say, this was valuable. I think it really was. And showcasing the best of us, seeing Chance at home, talking about, look, he's home with the children. Like there's this whole sort of, here we are all people in this too, right? I thought that came through in the special as well. You might be a celebrity, but you're also impacted by this. I'm trying to juggle. I'm talking to you right now. I don't know if my children are going to barge in here any minute now. They're home too, right? So it was just very real, and I thought very practical and impactful because we're actually going to help people with the information and with the funds raised.
Yeah, absolutely. It was an amazing, well-produced presentation, very informative and uplifting. And you even made an appearance yourself towards the end of the news special. And we're going to get to that because you made a very special announcement. But before we talk about that, what responsibility does Facebook have in helping the world cope with this global pandemic?
We believe that if you can, you should. And here's the thing, we are a company whose mission is to connect people. People are suffering right now. So we see it as our responsibility to help people. And we happen to be in the B, right? And this technology is the very technology people are relying on now that they cannot physically be together. So more than ever, right, we become central or important in supporting communities. People, I'm talking to you now, using technology, right? We've seen the use of use of Facebook Live, which was a product we created so people would have this sense of being together because we know we are experiencing something at the same time. It is live together. We've seen the use of live just skyrocket. People want that connection. And so in doing what we do as a business, it is deeply connected to the people who we support. And when you see people suffering and you know you can, you do. And so the help that we give, whether it is help to make sure our infrastructure runs, that's like basic, to make sure we can support the demand. That's something people are relying on, and we're invested in doing that. Then how do we help small businesses so that they can continue to thrive? How do we help individuals? How do we help around the world? Because people around the world are suffering. All of those are the things. For us, this became, once this crisis hit, this became our number one priority, and everything was shifted and focused to how do we help through COVID. Like there wasn't even a question about it.
And thank you so much for sharing that information. Does the company feel a particular responsibility when it comes to Black and Brown communities, those communities that are most vulnerable to this global health crisis?
Yes. The way we often build things is thinking about who are the most vulnerable groups. And if we can build for them, it'll help everybody, right? Everybody will get the benefit. But let's look at where the need is most. And so, for instance, we did a $100 million grant for small and medium businesses globally. Then we looked at, okay, what's the US portion of that? And then from the US portion, we specifically earmarked 50% of the US portion of that grant to go to small and medium businesses owned by women and minorities. Because we're also a data-driven company. And we know that 42% of small businesses are owned by women in this country, 37% are owned by minorities. If we don't help them, who we helping, right? So we think it is very important. And then if you look at this health crisis, who is it impacting most? We see it, we know the data. It is impacting people of color, Navajo. I mean, think of what's going on there, right? Like, it is just, as I said, it has exacerbated these long-standing inequities with critical consequences. And so we absolutely see it as important that we help where the need is most.
Last night, you were again featured on that incredible presentation, and you announced that Facebook is kicking off the BET Relief Fund with a $1 million donation that will be distributed in grants to local community-based organizations serving African Americans in regions most heavily impacted by COVID-19. So we're talking New York City, Detroit, New Orleans, LA, and Chicago. Why is it so important for Facebook to give this particular donation and support this particular effort?
This is one of the consequences of sometimes not being connected. You have frozen for me and I do not know.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
All right. Can you see and hear me?
Yes. Can you
All right, we are back.
Are we back? Okay.
We just roll with these punches in this time. It may have been
my roll with the punches.
That's right.
Yeah, we do. Okay. Did you hear the question or should I repeat it?
Please repeat it.
Absolutely. Okay. So last night you announced that Facebook is kicking off the BET Relief Fund with a $1 million donation that's going to be distributed in grants to local community-based organizations serving African Americans in the most hardest hit regions. So we're talking New York City, Detroit, Chicago, LA, Atlanta, New Orleans. Absolutely. Why was it important for Facebook to give this particular donation to support this cause?
Yeah, we're looking at all of the areas where there need. So with our small and medium business grants, we gave those in the cities where we had employees living and working. With this grant, we looked at where are the hardest hit cities. And so, look, there's need everywhere, right? But as the data has been coming in and we've been getting a clearer sense of where do people need the most help, well, that's where you need to, it's just like, you have respirators, you send them where people need them more, right? If you're good with your people. So similarly, this is a really important, helping the organizations which are on the ground, who know where do people not have food? Where do people not have work? Where do people not have shelter, right? That's really important to it's one thing to do it at the macro level, which is also valuable, but to do it at the micro level matters as well. And so these communities, which were laser focused on the African American communities that are hardest hit, are really important, we thought, to help.
And one thing that you mentioned is data, because without data, we cannot allocate resources to the communities that need it most. And Facebook is a data mine. How is Facebook leveraging its data and its products in particular to help these communities?
Yeah, well, with the sad reality that these communities are getting infected and dying at higher rates, and we could talk about all the reasons why that is, but that is the reality we are facing. We wanted to move into what do we do in this acute situation to make it better. People need things. They need respirators. They need PPE, right? They need equipment. We're thinking about our healthcare workers. We're thinking about our people on the front lines, right? All of the essential workers as well, because we need them to put on their masks so they can help the others as well. In the context of all of that, here's where data comes into it. We can look at the data, and on the basis of that, working with researchers, and we have partnered now with researchers at different universities, so that we can give them the data we have without us looking or holding onto that data for privacy reasons, right? We give it to the researchers. They then put that in an aggregate form. What that means is that it takes away any identifiable characters. I don't know your name, I don't know your city, I don't know that. But what they do is then they can give us back that aggregate data, and together we can build, let's call them heat maps. A heat map will show us where is something popping. So symptoms have become really critical in this. When you start to feel those symptoms, right, that could be COVID, people like, is it a cold or is it this? They start to show up many days before people show up at the hospital wanting that acute care. If we can get the hospitals to prepare for incoming ahead of time, that can save lives. So for instance, we leverage the fact that so many of our people are on Facebook, are using our products to do a symptom survey. And we ask people, are you losing your sense of smell? Do you have a cough? Are you getting a fever? Are you feeling achy? If you answer, it's all voluntary. But because we have so many people on the platform, if a certain percentage of those answers the survey, we then send that information to the researchers. They come back to us and we build these maps where we can see, county by county. In that county, stuff is about to pop in like 5 days. So using the data for good is critically important, particularly for this community.
Yes, and that's the name of the initiative you guys rolled out, Data for Good. Can you talk about how that will specifically help Black and Brown communities? We know when it comes to a larger perspective, how it's being used for good. What about Black and Brown communities?
Well, the sad truth in this particular case is that because those are the communities most impacted, it's going to help them the most. Because when we highlight the county, it's probably going to be a county which has a disproportionate number of Black and Brown people living in it, right? So this just happens to be one of those sad things where the overlap is that we're the ones who are suffering the most. And so we're going to get the most help. Look, was it help we wanted? No, right? Nobody would have wanted to be in this situation. But the truth is, that's where, if we do a heat map, that's where we're going to see pop. And then we can work with the health officials to get what people need there.
Right. And, I'm so happy that Facebook is approaching this issue from from different perspectives. As we mentioned, talked about the business loans that you guys are doing, and now you're using data for good to help people when it comes to the health in these communities. But I want to actually go back to the small businesses, because we know, Black women in particular have been taking off in entrepreneurship. So many of us have started our own businesses and we're thriving, the last 5 years in particular. And now with the economy plummeting, people don't know where their business is going to actually stand. And we saw that yesterday during the BET News special. They spoke to the owner of Melba's and other business owners. So let's just talk about again why it's so important. You guys have the $100 million grant that is going towards some of that's going to small businesses, some of that's going to news outlets, and then I know you said 50% is earmarked for women and Black businesses. Who is eligible? How can a Black business apply for some of that money?
Well, first, let me clarify that actually we have $100 million for small and medium businesses globally. 50% of the US part of that will go to women and minority-owned businesses. But the journalism grant is an additional $100 million. So it's not part of the same pool. And so there's a different sort of track, because that's another need, right? When I say we look at this thing holistically, where are there needs? To allow a lot of our Black newspapers to stay alive, to be able to get the information that people will trust, right? Because that's part of it. You want to connect people to getting the right information from sources that they trust. To allow them to keep operating in this environment was really important. So we've done a number of grants in the journalism space. And you have sort of traditional, right, decades-old publications which are struggling to keep afloat in this crisis. And we wanted to help them so that community members could keep getting the information that they needed from the sources that they trusted. So that's a separate grant. The $100 million grant for the small and medium businesses, when we come to the US, 40 million, then 20 million will go to minority and women-owned businesses. How you apply, we've tried to make it really simple. Facebook has a business resource center. If you go on the business resource center, like facebook.com, I believe it's /business boost grant. Those are the keywords, business boost grant on facebook.com. You will find the application form and all of the information about what you need and how to apply. So we've made it very simple for anybody to go in there. And we've, sort of stipulated what you need to show, but we're trying to really make it as easy as possible to get the application done so that we can move to getting the grant to you. We also have on that side, I should say, resources to help people understand how to keep their businesses at least up, if not profitable, during this time. So tips on how to use our products to help your businesses to thrive during this time. So that's a resource center for businesses. And we've seen now in the crisis, more and more people going to the center to get the information, both for the grant, but also to learn how to keep their businesses thriving in this crisis, how to leverage our products to help do that, how to do the kind of marketing and ads and all of that.
Maxine, you've been at Facebook for several years now, and from day one, your mission has always been to increase diversity and inclusion within this mega tech company. How are you maintaining that commitment to D&I amid the pandemic?
Yeah, look, it has given us, nobody knew this was coming. And so what I'm happy for is that the way we've always built our approach to diversity and inclusion is in a systemic way. Right? What are the systems we need underpinning everything in order to do our best to make this a diverse and an inclusive environment to work in? Where that has put us in a good position now is that because it wasn't based on like sort of programmatic, here's the bright, shiny things you can point to, which I think would take a bigger hit when you have to pivot in the way we did. It's systemic. D&I is built into everything we're doing. We're talking now about remote work, right? Everybody had to come out of the offices for their health. We are in the lucky and privileged position that most of our people could work from home. But we then had to think about, what does work from home mean? And anything we do, we put a D&I lens on. right? Does everybody have the same equipment? Does everybody have the same setup? So for instance, one of the things we did is we gave everybody a stipend to help them to set themselves up well at home to be able to work in as comfortable a position as possible without assuming that everybody could, right? That's taking a D&I lens to things. You don't know what your personal situation is at home, right? And we know that it varies. So let's solve. When I said we try to solve for the most vulnerable, and everybody else can benefit, sure, but let's try to solve for that. And so that's like one example of the way we did that. But we've now packaged, and I think we've made it public, tips on how to work from home in a way that's inclusive, right? When are you scheduling your calls? How are you making room for everyone to participate? It's different than when you're there in person, right? We're doing, check-ins with all the managers. How are they supporting the people who report to them? We do something called a mid-cycle check-in. Is everybody checking in? But we're trying our best right now to recognize the personal toll that COVID-19 is taking on everybody. And by the way, we're also cognizant of the fact that our Black and brown people will probably have the most, certainly in America, the most grief, the most funerals, the most support that they have to give both for themselves and for others. And that is something that we took very seriously as we thought about how do we operate in this new space. So, performance ratings, we said there's going to be no performance ratings this half, none. Because we are recognizing how people are going to be living at this time. And like I said, we know Black people in America, that's going to hit them the hardest. And we are Black people in America. I'm a Black person in America, right? Our employees are Black people in America. And so we needed to solve for that. That's inclusion. So what D&I looks like may be a little different. We're not having big community get-togethers as we would usually do, right? But we're doing other things in a more fundamental way to make sure that we are in fact thinking of everyone and giving everybody the opportunity to thrive. That's what inclusion is. It's this opportunity with dignity. And that's what we're trying to do in this moment.
Very important that you guys are, like you said, some people have access and privilege that others don't. And if you're not cognizant of that, it's easy to bypass. It's easy to have a blind spot when it comes to who has the privilege of high-speed access and who has the privilege of a confined space to work in when many of us are either sharing spaces with roommates or have large families. So that is very important. I'm glad that you mentioned that.
And I should say, along those lines, there are lots, we've given people extended paid leave. Like if you're like, you know what, even with your stipend, even with no ratings, I can't do this. We understand that. And so there are extended leaves. We're paying contract workers, people who can't work from home are still being paid. So look, again, you talk about responsibility, you could call it obligation, you could call it humanity, right? Recognizing humanity and doing what's right by humanity.
What tools, products, or initiatives does Facebook plan to roll out in the future that will continue to help Black and brown communities once this pandemic does end?
Wow. So we are working on a whole bunch of things always. As I said, we pivoted everything around COVID. So we first phase was how do we help in the acute phase? And then we're starting to look at what happens next, right? What happens once people can get back up to speed and once the economy starts to open. But the truth is that with humility, we don't know exactly what things are going to look like. So we have a few things that we are, well, many things actually, that we are sort of baking, but I would be, I'm hesitant to sort of announce anything that's coming because we're really responsive to what we see coming in the data. And so much of it depends on how people behave in this moment, right? If we all do what the sort of officials say we should be doing, which is social distancing, taking care of ourselves, like maybe we have a different kind of future at a different rate. If we don't, we don't know, right? So I think it's premature for us to sort of announce, here's what we're going to have in the future when things get back normal, because we don't even know what normal is going to look like. But we're working on different assumptions and teams everywhere are trying to be innovative to think about how we can help.
Mm. You know, in midst of the devastation and the mass destruction that COVID-19 has caused us, have you personally found a silver lining?
Yes. Yeah. The silver lining that I've seen is that I think it has displayed in the most stark ways how similar we are, how human we all are, how much the differences that we tend to focus a lot of our time on are not in fact the most critical ones. We all have lungs, we all need air, we all need the pathways to be clear. And when we're all dying, I think it's interesting, that the virus didn't begin at these rates. And so there was sort of stark realization that it was hitting all of us, right? We saw it pop in different countries in the world with people who looked differently. Now, America, we're seeing exacerbation here, some underlying stuff. But because it didn't start here, I think it's interesting that the world has been able to look back and say, oh, wow, like this is hitting our whole world. The other thing is, and by that, what I mean is that I think deeply people will understand how we are more connected than we are separated, even if we have different cultures, even if we speak different languages, that we're connected by the fact that we're all human and we're all vulnerable. We also see now with the environment, right? What's happening with humans not participating in the way that we have participated, sort of without thinking. And that's stark. And I'm hoping that the silver lining there is, right? It will give us some understanding of, oh yeah, maybe there's a different dance we need to do with our environment, with our world. Because I've said maybe 10 times since we've been talking about persistent underlying issues. Well, there's a persistent underlying issue in our environment as well, which is the impact that humans are having on it. And as you pull back the humans now, whoa, look at what's happening. So I think in there's been a lot of lessons for us. And my hope is that we will use those lessons, not just sort of, oh yeah, interesting, and then we go back to business as normal, but how do we treat each human being, knowing about our interdependence? That's what the virus has shown us, that we're interdependent. I need you to stay home for me to be well. You need me to do the same for you, no matter what our color is, no matter what our background is, right? It's the common humanity that connects us through this. And so I am hoping that coming out of this, people will understand it in a really deep and fundamental way, and it may change our behaviors towards each other and towards the environment.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Maxine. Do you have any final thoughts or anything else that you would like to share with us today?
My thoughts are that I hope everybody is taking care of themselves. I hope everybody is recognizing the need to be mindful of how we operate of ourselves, and how we support others. This is absolutely the time that we need to give. And we also need to protect our space. We know, for instance, that the culmination of the things we've been talking about, the health issues, the economic issues, are going to have an outsized impact on mental health in our communities. Are we taking care of that? Are we taking care of ourselves so that the anxiety of it all is something that we figure out how to work through, to put one foot in front of each other? We are, and I am saying we, and by this, excuse me, but I talk about people who are those who are the descendants of others who have gone through some trying things, with slavery being one of them. We're people who have suffered a lot. And we kind of think we know how to do suffering. Even if we've suffered a lot, I want us to recognize this is a real thing we're going through. This is a real moment. And I want us to sort of face that and do what we need to do to help us and our communities to get through it. So recognize it is hitting us. It is hitting us harder than others. And we need to support each other, and we need to support ourselves to get through this as whole as we possibly can. So I would love people to give themselves a grace to do that.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Maxine. We appreciate your time here today and sharing the information that Facebook is doing to impact and help communities of color at this time. So thank you again.
Thank you for bringing light to this.
Absolutely. We'll catch you next time. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.